Hey guys, and welcome to the show. Got another episode here of Metahuman Media Reacts. This one about Captain America: Civil War. So today, joined by the full team is here today. Myself, Greg Smith, joined by Kevin Allen,
Hey.
Martin Simpson,
What's up, guys?
and of course Christopher the Legend McDonald. How are you today, good sir?
I'm doing right.
Excellent, that's what we want to hear. So, yeah, it's been out for a few weeks now, so we've all had the chance to digest Captain America Civil War and really just give our thoughts about what we think so far. I think there's a lot of positives for this one, so we'll get right to it. Kev, let's go.
All right, let's do it. One of the main positives for me, and something that's a bit of a dream come true for live action, was the bromance between Cap and Bucky. In Winter Soldier, Bucky is, a blank slate. He's a force of nature that's really just a catalyst in the movie. In Civil War, we really get to see who the man underneath all of that is. We see that actually he's a bit of a tortured soul that's trying to outrun both his past and his present. He's really tormented by the actions that he's done as the Winter Soldier. And through that, you get to see this great relationship that he has with Cap. And you see just how much Cap's willing to do for him and how far he's willing to go, to the point that it does actually lead to a full-scale war between the heroes. So that was something that I really did love about the movie.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we've been waiting for that bromance to bloom, really, ever since the first Cap film. I know we all shed a tear when Bucky fell off that train. I certainly cried into a pillow that night. But we've waited long enough. We've cried. We've wrote songs about it.
Did you have Sam Smith playing in the background?
I didn't, but I will going forward. I will certainly keep that in mind.
You just weren't the tortured soul you were when Bucky died, were you?
The reason I've got a smile on my face right now is because I'm thinking about it. Like it's going to be super. But yes, that was certainly awesome to see finally appearing in the films, and hopefully more of that to come. Whether they follow the direction of the comics or kind of go in their own way, it's certainly something to look forward to. Anyway, Chris, what did you think?
I love the film. I'd say it's probably easily my favourite of the Marvel films so far. One thing that really stood out especially for me though was Spider-Man. I know that was a standout for a lot of people, but for me, I didn't expect him to be. Like, I was happy for him to join the MCU, but we've had like 5 Spider-Man films before now, and
yeah, it's like, do we need more Spider-Man?
It wasn't that I did. Yeah, it wasn't that I was against it, but I had gotten what I felt everything I needed from seeing Spider-Man in live action. I wasn't opposed to more, but it wasn't what I was expecting to be the standout. But what made it very special in a very unexpected way was that when he shows up in the film, what immediately hit me was that he's Ultimate Spider-Man in this. He acts like Ultimate Spider-Man. The conversation him and Tony have is almost how every issue of Ultimate Spider-Man is, where Spidey and some other often superhero, or most often that kind of conversation he's having there would be with Nick Fury, just talking about these ideals and why he does these things. And Ultimate Spider-Man was one of my favourite characters, and we'd kind of not had him in his own book for a long time, and it was unexpected to kind of almost get the character back in that way, and it really made him stand out for me. I thought the depiction was great. He was great in the fight scene. The banter he throws around was great. In motion he's great. It was great to see Spidey actually fighting on the level we know he can, because he's a street level hero, and usually you don't associate him like going toe to toe with Avengers. You do kind of forget how strong he was. And I guess that in general is something else I really liked about the film, that a lot of the fighting throughout the film in general was quite impressive and well done. Bucky was like a wrecking ball, much more than he is in the comics actually. And Black Panther was really standout as well in that regard. Like, we really got a sense of how trained and practiced this guy is. One thing with Black Panther that I am curious about is I did think what they did with him was great. but he didn't feel necessarily like the comic Black Panther. Like, you didn't get that sense of him being very tactical and planning ahead and looking into people's weaknesses before he comes into the fight. It is almost one ahead of time in the way that, you know, Batman does and stuff. And I do wonder if that's something that we'll see more of come his own film, or if they're just going to go a different direction.
Well, I've only got 2 words to say about what I really liked, and that's Aunt May. That was a surprise. that was a surprise, and it was a good surprise.
Did it give you a bit of a rise, Greg?
Oh yeah, that's a video for another day, guys. But, I think I gave everyone a rise, if you know what I mean. But yeah, that would go. Honestly though, like, just not because, you know, she's weirdly attractive. I've never seen that, or even thought we'd ever say that about Aunt May. But because Tony Stark said it, it's fine. You know, we're all allowed to say it. You know, if he says
there's
it,
a lot of
I can
things.
say
I
it.
think there's a lot of things Tony Stark says you won't get away with saying in real life, to be fair.
Yeah, but that
Has
one.
Aunt May ever been that
I think a
attractive in the
lot
comics?
would agree with me on that one. So he's good in my book for that one. But yeah, I mean, Spider-Man, obviously, a lot of people said that the Andrew Garfield movies were kind of like Ultimate Spider-Man, or that was the direction that we're kind of going with that. So I didn't really hate those films. So if we were seeing another version of Ultimate Spider-Man on the big screen, then yeah, I'm all for that. I just don't want the same old repetitive Spider-Man stories though. Like, I do want something fresh, and certainly Tom Holland brought that. And yeah, I mean, I can't honestly say that he's been the best Spidey so far, because we've seen him in what, like 2 scenes or something.
Oh, he is for me
3
within 5
scenes.
minutes, but I'm kind of biased.
Don't get me wrong. Like, the scenes that he did appear in, he was great. But I want to see him in his like own film first before I crown him like the best Spider-Man ever.
To be honest, for me, it's the Raimi films, like as films, are definitely the best ones, but I don't think the best depiction of Spider-Man. So there's only real competition in terms of, does he feel like Spider-Man? Not how good it's filmed, but does he feel like Spider-Man as Garfield?
Yeah.
And I did feel like he had the edge on him.
He did feel like Spider-Man, which is what we were wanting. But I'm just saying though, like, you can have a good actor, but the film can be balls. So I just want both, really. And from the main man, Michael Keaton, is apparently officially signed on now as the villain. So that's a good move, in my opinion. He's not done really any terrible films lately. They've all been Oscar nominated, and he's been in a lot of good movies. So hopefully that trend continues.
He's not a stranger to superhero movies either.
Well,
So,
exactly. Yeah. It will be weird at first seeing him play a villain, knowing, you know, he's Batman, you know, underneath all that.
You were saying though, Greg, with Civil War, you were saying, you know, Aunt May was quite a standout for you, and you were sort of leaning into something else.
No, that's it. Aunt May got it for me. That's why I went to see the film twice. Aunt May. Genuinely. But it'd be good. I mean, I could talk about Aunt May all day. But Martin, what did you think about the film?
Okay, well, for me, the best things about superhero movies are when they don't feel like superhero movies, because I think Chris Nolan's Batman trilogy is the epitome of what a superhero movie should be, because that didn't feel like a superhero movie to me. They felt like crime dramas. Like, the villains and the heroes were very realistic. Like, Batman was super realistic, and so was the Joker. With Civil War, I thought that a lot of it was grounded in... For a while, I didn't think I was watching a Marvel movie. I thought I was watching the next Jason Bourne movie, especially the scene
until you see all the superpowers and, you know,
yeah,
Marvel
I was going
movie.
to say, apart from the battle at the German airport and the battle between Cap, Winter Soldier, and Iron Man, the scene that really pits that description for me, it has to be when Cap is chasing Winter Soldier and, you know, the German police burst through the window. And that's very more kind of action thriller related rather than like a traditional superhero movie. And I think that's great because it kind of brings a counterbalance to all these fantastic guys with either abilities or, in Tony Stark's case, a super suit.
Yeah.
I don't know about anyone else, but I thought that was pretty good.
One thing I do want to say on that point, Martin, is that I don't really agree. I think there's a bit of like stereotyping going on. Like, comic books aren't really a genre. And with the Batman example, you know, a lot of the Batman stories are crime drama stories. and Batman has more in common with something like Sherlock Holmes than he does, Superman or Captain America or something. And Captain America, at the same time, very often is political and very espionage based, and he's got a lot, connections with Nick Fury, which leads into more, sort of espionage and a lot of Hydra.
Well,
so it's
right. All that granted, but I'm talking from the viewpoint of a casual fan who doesn't really read a lot of the comics and doesn't know a lot of the backstory, and is just this is the cinematic versions we're talking here. So
it's very different outside the stereotype. I'll agree with that. It's outside the stereotype. It's just it is kind of the experience we do get reading the comics.
Just remember as well, though, these movies aren't made just for comic book fans. They're made for the general audience, and to be honest,
they're made for everybody. I mean, if these movies were made for comic book fans, then I don't think they'd be as popular as they are.
No.
Because even with comics being as big as a business as they are now, it's still a niche market in its own way. I mean, yeah, you've got your movies, your TV shows and things, but the actual comic books itself and the people who know about the lore, like the Golden, Silver Age, Bronze Age, like etc., that's still a niche market. So you have to appeal to everybody. Like these are like essentially family films, and like some families don't read comic books, so they've got to appeal to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, we can agree to disagree on that, but let's just go into the negatives, because we have said a lot about what we liked about the film so far anyway. So we've mentioned Cap and Bucky earlier. Kev, did you not like anything about the film?
Yeah, I mean, on the whole, I loved the movie. I think if I was to sort of pick my main gripe with the movie, was actually how it handled the ideological war that's the center of the whole movie. Aside from Cap and Iron Man, who have well-defined motivations for why they're doing what they're doing, the actual war comes down to two sides, and unfortunately for me, the two sides are made up of characters that are ultimately just siding with who their friends are. For the most part, they don't have motivations. They're very 2D in that sense, that it's just as simple as siding with their friends. I will say that Black Widow is a bit of an exception. You do see that there's some internal conflict there, and she is wrestling with which side does she fall on, which ultimately does have an effect later in the movie when she doesn't fully flip sides, but let's just say that she did help the other side.
Totally.
That was my main gripe with the movie, is I felt like the ideological side of it was underserved.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that stood out to me as well. Certainly, it was just like Tony Stark said to Spider-Man, "Hey, you better join and fight with me, or I'm dating Aunt May." And he was like, "No," so certainly...
I do feel like it was kind of a hard pill to swallow that Tony Stark just shows up, and Peter Parker, idolizes scientists and stuff, so there is a degree of his idol, his heroes walking in and telling him, I'm recruiting you for this team, but it's a lot to accept that Spidey's just going to walk out and fight Captain America and Tony Stark.
Who he also looks up to.
Yeah,
so.
And that even comes up during the fight, but, Tony told me you're doing these bad things, and I've got to believe him. It was a bit,
well, the thing is, Peter always refers to Tony as Mr. Stark, so he's looking to him as more of his employer rather than his idol in that moment.
Yeah, I think Tony's definitely a role model for Peter in the film, and that's going to... something, is clearly going to be a thing in his own film, because they've said Tony will be returning. I think they're going to adjust it so that Tony Stark will serve for him the role that Nick Fury did in the Ultimate Comics, but yeah, I would have liked to see just a bit of fleshing out and justification there.
Yeah. Well, Kev, what about you? Oh, sorry, Kev, I just spoke to you. God damn it, I'm getting tired. Chris, you speak so much, I forget that it's your turn. What do you think?
Well, one thing that was an issue for me was Zemo. Zemo in the film is really just a plot device to enable him to go, and he's not really anything like Zemo from the comics. They give him a different backstory. It's a very one-and-done story. There was no reason to use the character of Zemo for this. doesn't resemble him in any way, doesn't serve the same purpose. And really it felt just like having a named villain to have a named villain, whereas he would be much better served to just be a miscellaneous character created for the film. It's not like they can't make those. And all this really does is take Zemo off the table for being like Zemo in the future. Now, we're never going to get that in the MCU because he was just kind of reduced to what was a sympathetic plot device and nothing more, unfortunately.
Well, why do you think they changed Zemo's character so much then? Why didn't we get the comic version?
Like I said, I think it's that they want to have a named villain in these films for the sake of having a named villain. You know, I think they think it's easier to sell people on Cap's going to be fighting Baron Zemo than it's Cap's going to be fighting MCU Mook number 3. Yeah. So I think it is just having a named villain for the sake of having a named villain, but they don't really care so much about how they're using that villain, respective of who that villain is.
It was disappointing because even Crossbones was more Crossbones than Zemo was Zemo.
Yeah.
So, and you know, obviously watching Winter Soldier, that was just one thing we were kind of looking forward to seeing Crossbones like he is in the comics, but of course, that just didn't turn out to be anything like the way he is at all. Martin, do you want to comment on this?
I've got to be honest. I was really clutching at straws to find faults with this movie, but I'm going to have to agree with Kev on, now that I've had a thought about after seeing this movie. The supporting characters, especially the supporting Avengers, were very one-dimensional in their motivations, and it just made me think that they could have fleshed that out a lot more. But in turning that into a kind of positive is that it makes it a bit less easy for which side the audience needs to root for, because these are two sides to the same ideological coin, and especially at the end, it's not obvious who you should root for, because on the one hand, you've got, you know, Cap, who's just trying to protect Bucky, who's been his friend and who's had his back all this time, and then the other hand, you have Tony Stark, who's, you know, the Winter Soldier killed his family, so he's got perfect motivations to just blast Winter Soldier's head off right then and there. So I don't know. It was very difficult to know who to root for by the end.
I think that's what was so good about the film, though. I mean, that there are very few things that we really disliked about it. It was one of the strongest Marvel movies so far, and there was a lot of.
I'm not disputing that, but also, like Kev's right, there's, you know, the dimension of the other characters did seem a bit superfluous, and they were just there just so that,
well,
you know,
they
had even numbers.
Well,
just so they had even numbers for the team.
With a movie with so many like big shots in it, you know, with Cap, Iron Man, Spidey, you know, not to mention the other regulars, trying to fit everyone in was always going to be the most difficult thing to pull off in this film. So considering what they did do with all these characters, and they managed to get them in, the ones that you weren't expecting to be so great were awesome. Ant-Man, shout out. You know, I think that was brilliant. Like, he was awesome there. But yeah, certainly they had a difficult job, the most difficult job so far from these team-up movies following the Avengers, because this is, of course, a Cap film. It wasn't Avengers 2.5, even though it felt like it at times. They still managed to make it all about Cap at the end.
I do think it would have maybe been a bit better served to just call it Marvel Civil War, and they would have dodged a lot of criticisms there, but it is a really minor thing to be picking up on the name.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they needed the Cap film. I know they released all these schedules years in advance, and they had to have Cap here instead of making another, like you said, Marvel Civil War or Avengers Civil War. But certainly the end result is what we have, and we all liked it. So yeah, that's our video for today. We've all agreed to disagree, but overall, I think we all enjoyed this movie. Let us know what you think of what you thought of the film. Obviously, loads of you guys will have seen it a good few times now as well, I'm sure. Leave your comments below. Of course, subscribe, as we have a lot more videos coming to you each week. So goodbye from me and everyone else, and we'll catch you next time.
See you guys.